Good morning, everybody. We will just be waiting a couple more moments for the rest of the attendees to join, so just bear with us for around 2 minutes. Thank you. For those of you that have just joined, we're just going to wait a couple more minutes for a few more of the attendees to join, and then we will be starting, so just around 1 minute, slightly less. Okay, fantastic. I hope everybody's doing well. So we've just had a few questions come through already. So it's really good to see that you guys know how to interact with GoToWebinar. So I'll just start with a bit of a quick housekeeping and then we'll get into the introductions. So you're able to see on the control panel there, you should have a couple of options. One will be questions, one will be chat. And at any point during this, if you have any questions you want to ask, please enter those into the question box, and I will answer those as we go, or likely at the end. So I just want to confirm that everyone can hear me and see me. So if everyone can head over to the chat and just give me a quick, yes, Guy, we can hear you, or hello, or good morning, that would be absolutely great. So I can see a few people are already doing that. That's brilliant. Great, good morning. Everyone's really excited and ready to go. This is great. Well, I can see we've got people from all around the world. We've got people from the States, so I appreciate you guys waking up so early to join us today. That's brilliant. And you can all see the slides. That's absolutely fantastic. Oh, so someone's saying they can't hear me. You may just need to check your audio, but it looks like everyone else is on board, so that's fantastic. So the quick question that I've already received is, are the slides going to be made available afterwards? Unfortunately, they're not. We are running this webinar again on the 12th of December, and in the new year, we will be releasing the video of this. Anyone that's part of any of our membership, the Cloud Service Retainer, or our new Facebook group, you'll likely get early access to all of this. And if you're interested in finding out how to join that would you can just get in touch with us after this and we will let you know. Okay. So we're going to dive in. That's the housekeeping out of the way. So just for those of you who don't know, my name's Guy Earnshaw. and I am the Senior Solutions Consultant at BlueHub. So BlueHub are a team of consultants who focus primarily on the Xero ecosystem. So we are not accountants, we are purely app experts. So we work with Xero users and advisors to help them select which apps are going to work best and then set those up and provide everyone with training and support. So that's really how we got involved in Xero and the broader ecosystem. And we work with lots of accountants around the world, helping them transition their clients from more traditional server-based systems into the cloud. And one of the main areas that I look after are our inventory clients. So this is anyone that works in e-commerce, retail, wholesale. So as you can imagine, a lot of my clients also sell on Amazon, which is why I've wanted to cover this topic for quite a while. So Amazon and Xero, obviously two very strong brands in their own right. Amazon, you know, close to being on and off the biggest company in the world, and Jeff Bezos being the richest man in the world, depending on what day you look at it. And my assumption here is that everybody on this webinar is familiar with Xero, and likely we all use Amazon in our life, but most of you, I imagine, aren't selling on Amazon and don't interact with it as a seller or a vendor, so probably have slightly less experience there. So the main question we're looking to answer during this is Xero suitable for Amazon sellers? And of course, it's not a simple yes/no answer, so we will be, you know, covering it in detail and really getting into it. A few people are struggling with the audio, and this will all be recorded, so if it is patchy, that's unfortunate, but we will send out a recorded version in the new year. Okay. So let's dive in. Let's look at what we're going to cover during this. So the main question, is Xero suitable for Amazon sellers? And then within that, what are the types of Amazon sellers? There are different businesses that sell on Amazon and we need to interact with them in different ways. What questions should you be asking Amazon sellers when you're looking to see if Xero would be suitable? What are the best integration apps or the best integration app? Bit of a spoiler for you there. And which are the best inventory apps? And then finally, how do you handle multiple sales channels, which is really key in the e-commerce world. So why are we interested in Amazon sellers as Xero advisors? So I'm going to do the first of a few polls that we're going to do on this. So I'm just going to head into my poll section and I'm going to launch a poll. And it's just a really simple question. Have you personally purchased anything off Amazon in the last 2 weeks? So I'm going to fire that up now, and it's a simple yes or no, so that should launch. You should all have access to that poll now, and if everyone can just start entering if it's a yes or a no. Great stuff, guys. So the votes are still coming in, but roughly 67% of everyone in attendance today has purchased from Amazon in the last 2 weeks. So there are very few companies in the world where we'd have that kind of uniformity. It really is all-encompassing, and for those of you that remember Amazon in the early days, it started as a website purely selling books. And then over time, they've encroached in more and more different verticals and sectors, and they've had their trials and tribulations along the way, as we've seen with their fashion projects. But over time, they learn and they adapt. So now Amazon is the central hub for most of our purchasing that probably is in groceries or clothing. Aside from that, most people are going through Amazon. So yeah, the final score there is 69% of purchase in the last 2 weeks. So as well as it obviously being a favorite platform of everyone here, it's true around the world. And as far as that interferes with the sellers that we're interested in, there are over 2 million seller accounts, and that stat was taken in 2014, so it's probably far beyond that now. And over 100,000 of those businesses net over $100,000 in sales a year. So there is a vast array of businesses from the very, very small and micro up to full businesses with multiple employees, multiple sites that are using Amazon as their primary sales channel. And where this is really merging quite nicely with the growth of Xero is that the latest marketplace, to be added to Amazon is Australia. Which of course is right near the birthplace of Xero, so it's a really hot topic now in the Xero community. So that's why we're all interested in Amazon sellers, and I'm really keen to find out how your experience with Amazon, which we'll come to later. So is Xero suitable for Amazon sellers? Yes, it is, but as with most things in the software world, it's not a simple yes/no answer. But in general, yes, it is. So why do I say but not alone? Well, Xero and Amazon don't have a native integration. So Xero alone, while it would be able to manage the business of Amazon, it would have to be done manually. And Amazon sends over a settlement that can include hundreds of different lines, from sales, fees, commissions, reimbursements, and entering these manually, ensuring that they're all allocated to the correct account within Xero, is both time-consuming and also likely to incur human error. So what does a settlement from Amazon look like? So I found a really simple example here. So even though this is a simple example, you can still see that it's relatively complex. We've got ins and outs on the same page, and the business owner or the seller would need to know how these need to be mapped. And often these statements can span 2 months, so they'd need to know how to allocate the revenue appropriately. So doing this manually on a daily or weekly or monthly basis is a real hassle for businesses, not to mention that there's no inventory control possible. You're not able to find out where you need to deliver the goods. You purely get delivered this top line financial information. So you may ask, well, if I get this, how do I know where I dispatch my items? The sellers would have to go back into Amazon. So again, adding to that manual process. So just before we dive into the different types of sellers, we're going to do one more poll. And I'm just interested to know what your experience is with Amazon sellers. So this is whether you have any clients or you don't. So I'm just going to launch that and see where that comes in. So once that becomes live, fantastic. So we're seeing a vast majority of people here currently have clients that are on Xero who sell on Amazon. So it's over 67% at the moment, and that's rising. So we'll just let those final votes come in, and then we'll close it off just so we can see where it finally lies. But yeah, we're already seeing then 67% of you actually have Amazon clients. So this is brilliant. It's going to be very applicable to what you're doing. Great. So for me, this is really the start point, right? So now we know that Xero can be suitable for Amazon, but we know it won't work alone. So there are different types of solutions we can go with. There are integration solutions, and then there are inventory solutions. But to know which one we are going to use, we need to group our sellers. So as I mentioned, there are over 2 million different sellers, so there are different size of businesses. So the first classification I have are infrequent sellers. I personally do this. I buy a few items, I sell them on Amazon, and essentially it's a bit of a side project. We then have people that sell purely on Amazon and then use FBA, which is fulfilled by Amazon, for all of their logistics and fulfillment. Again, this won't be a full-scale business often. Then we have what I class as Amazon only. These businesses, while they may use Fulfilled by Amazon for some of their logistics, they'll also have internal warehouses or use alternative 3PL companies. And then the final classification we've got are e-commerce businesses. So Amazon will only make up a small percentage of what they're doing, and they'll largely manage a lot of their logistics personally. So let's dive into them in a bit more detail. So infrequent sellers. They sell on Amazon as a supplementary income. Often they're going to ship these items personally, and some may use Fulfilled by Amazon. So actually this is an investment strategy that I've seen some people do recently, where they'll buy a bulk of products from a marketplace like Alibaba in Asia at a hugely reduced rate, and then ship those straight to FBA and then distribute those until all the products are sold. So as far as they're going to relate in a UK point of view as a business, they're going to be sole traders. Usually the revenues and fees incurred just won't make sense to make a limited company, although some may. Next, we have our Amazon-only, FBA-only sellers. So again, that's fulfilled by Amazon. So I class these people as 100% of their sales are done through Amazon, and they outsource 100% of their fulfillment to Fulfilled by Amazon. So this is really the next step up from those infrequent sellers. This is often still a passive income, but for some it is a full-time job, and there can be a limited company potential due to that. So the next classification, these are much larger businesses. So I class this as full-scale business customer e-commerce businesses. So they'll use Amazon as their sole or primary sales channel. So really I class that as anyone that's using Amazon for over 80% of their sales. They'd fall into the Amazon only seller category. The rest may come as direct sales on the phone or via email, or they may have their own niche e-commerce website. They'll manage all of their shipping either internally or outsourced to an alternative third-party logistics company that isn't FBA. So that means different considerations. These people, much like the previous ones, are going to need to know the addresses. Complex fulfillment and order processing, so exactly that. Because they're going to have to be in charge of the logistics, they're going to need to know the individual order details, maybe update their recipient with tracking details, and all of that needs to be considered when we're putting forward a solution. Again, they're going to be limited companies. And then finally, we have our full-scale e-commerce businesses. So these make up a good majority of the clients I personally work with at BlueHub, and I'd say the majority have 3 or more different sales channels. So that could be Amazon, their own e-commerce website, and then B2B email and phone sales. Again, so that's where the offline sales come in. They will use either their own internal warehouses or outsource to third-party logistics companies. And there is the potential for complex stock. So what do I mean by this? A lot of these e-commerce businesses will actually manufacture their own products or have their own proprietary products that they sell. So they may want to have bill of materials either for component parts or merely just for packaging so they can accurately track a cost of goods sold. So that's another consideration we need to think about when we are looking at these types of businesses. And again, is they're going to be managing the fulfillment or having to deliver the fulfillment information to the third-party logistics company, it's another complex order process. So that's it. There are 4 types of Amazon sellers, and for the rest of this we are not going to focus on the infrequent sellers because frankly they're going to make up a really small percentage of the clients that you guys are working with, and frankly there's not a great deal of fees that we can generate from them. So we're not going to spend any more time focusing on them, and instead we're going to focus on the final 3 types. So what are the solutions? As I alluded to earlier, there are 2 ways of really dealing with these clients that need to link their Amazon seller account with Xero. One being integration, and the other being an inventory app that will integrate with both sides but also manage the stock control and also the order processing and fulfillment. So they're the 2 types of solutions we're going to work with. But to understand what solution is going to work for our clients and in fact what type of seller they are, there are some core questions that I like to ask. So for those of you that were asking earlier about whether these slides are going to be available, I strongly suggest you do some screenshots once we have all these questions up, because this is really going to be quite useful. So the first question I ask anyone that is requiring some kind of inventory or anyone that sells products is how many sales they make per month. Then we ask them, do you sell on other platforms? So this could be e-commerce platforms like Magento or Shopify, or it could be they have retailers that they sell to or direct sales. Then we ask if they use FBA. If not, do they manage their own fulfillment? And also, do they use any other third-party logistics companies? And if so, what form of integration is required by these companies? So just those 5 questions there is a really strong start point, and it's really going to help indicate which type of seller you have and what the size of business is. So one of the key questions there are how many sales per month. This order volume is going to greatly indicate the complexity of the job. So while it won't necessarily indicate which type of seller they are, it will give you an idea of the size of business and whether we have to consider consolidating those sales, because as most of you well know, there is a transaction limit within Xero. It's rather murky what those figures are. You hear as low as 1,000, as high as 10,000 monthly sales. But that's a consideration, because a lot of these Amazon sellers are really high volume businesses that have really low value transactions. Fortunately, we can pull over summaries, but that's why that's a really key question. So the first scenario when we're coming up with a solution, the first example we're going to use are Amazon only sellers and those that only use FBA. So again, they sell only on Amazon, they outsource all of their fulfillment to FBA, or they manage some of it internally. So for this, in my eyes, there's really only one solution at the moment that stands out, and that's A2X. So as this image shows here, it gathers the sales settlements from Amazon, pulls those into A2X, maps them to the chart of accounts and correct tax codes, and then enters them into Xero. So what are some of the advantages of this solution? It covers multiple marketplaces. So while it is restricted to only Amazon, it covers different geographical locations and the different currencies that they require. It automatically gathers the Amazon settlement, so you don't have to trigger that. And then it posts a summarized transaction into Xero. So if you do have clients that are selling thousands a month, thousands of different orders per month, sorry, then you will need to have summarized transactions to avoid hitting that transaction limit within Xero. So we can pull a settlement for a given period, be that day, a week, month, and then post that as a single invoice that contains all the fees, sales, commissions, and reimbursements, and maps them appropriately. And the total of that single invoice will match the payment deposit that is sent over from Amazon exactly. So as the customer within the invoice will be Amazon, and the sender of the money will be Amazon, and the amounts will match, sorry, it will automatically indicate that you can reconcile that by just using the OK button. So someone just asked a really quick question about whether the transaction limit is around affects the price point of their systems. No, I'm purely bringing that up because it affects the transaction limit of Xero. And it integrates with both Xero and QuickBooks Online. So I'm sure a few of you aren't solely Xero accountants. You also probably have a few clients on QBO, and in which case A2X works there too. So what are some of the disadvantages? There's no inventory control, so it's not going to pull over the individual line items as it is a summary, so you're not going to be able to use a stock control within Xero. You also don't have any of the order processing information. So what I mean by this are the addresses and the recipient's name, and the ability to update that with a tracking number or a delivery number. It doesn't have the ability for you to mark items as sent or picked or packed. There's simply none of those controls. It's just purely managing the financial updates into Xero. And again, it only works for Amazon. So if you do have clients that are selling on eBay or Etsy as well, it's not going to work for them. So scenario 2, here are our Amazon sellers that don't really use FBA much, if at all, and they are doing all of their fulfillment internally or with a third-party logistics company. So again, they sell on Amazon, they may have other sales channels, and they're outsourcing their fulfillment. So for me, my favorite solution for these types of clients is actually Dear Systems. So Dear Systems, unlike A2X, falls into the inventory app category. But there are some really good features for these types of sellers. especially if they do have some FBA. So here are the advantages. It links to multiple marketplaces. So if, as well as selling on Amazon, they sell on Etsy and eBay, we can link both those channels, and it also integrates with things like Magento and Shopify if they have their own e-commerce. It also has a built-in B2B e-commerce platform for those that do have some kind of B2B element to their business. You're able to manage multiple warehouses and have stock control. It integrates with FBA, which is really key for one of the disadvantages that comes up. It's got really flexible reporting too. So if you start to want to look at when certain products sell at certain time periods or when you run a certain promotion, it's a really good way of getting that information out, which you can't pull from Xero or can't pull that easily from Amazon. So here's one of the main disadvantages with with its current integration with Amazon, is that it too, just like A2X, pulls over the settlement a summarized statement. So it doesn't have the individual order details, and it doesn't actually have the individual items that have been ordered. So that means that that element of it has to be done through Amazon, which is why it works really well with FBA, because all the fulfillment is done by them. You don't really have to worry about that order processing. So it's a really good system if someone's selling on Amazon as well as other sales channels and uses FBA. So scenario 3 are for our full-scale e-commerce businesses. So they sell on multiple sites and channels. They outsource all of their fulfillment to third-party logistics companies, or they may have their own warehouse or warehouses. So these are going to have much more complex both warehouse management requirements and order processing requirements. So the inventory apps that I like to use for these types of clients are Stitch Labs, sorry that's not showing up too well on the blue background, and Sin7. So let's get into why. Actually, just before we do that, for people that are managing their own fulfillment and they need to integrate with shipping providers like Royal Mail, FedEx, DPD, you will need some kind of shipping app alongside these. So Ship Theory, for anyone in the UK, works absolutely fantastic, and for anyone that's joined us from the US, ShipStation is a great tool. There are actually more and more of these apps coming out by the day, but ShipStation, for example, has some really great automation, so it can really take a lot of that effort off when it comes to printing different labels and so on. So some of the advantages of these systems are they can link to multiple marketplaces, similarly to Deer. They can integrate with all the major e-commerce platforms. So as well as the two beasts in Magento and Shopify, we're also looking at things like WooCommerce and BigCommerce. And between those four systems, that does make up the vast majority of the e-commerce apps used out there, unless someone has a bespoke system. And these solutions will allow them to manage their warehouses, so you can put inventory locations, minimum and maximum stock quantities for the entire business or for a specific location. And companies of this size will really require that. But here's why Stitch Labs and Sin7 really stand out from all the other inventory apps. It's the fact that they have integrations with the third-party logistics companies. So a third-party logistics company is going to need the order information. They're going to need to know what items have been ordered and who they need to dispatch it to and what that address is. They may also need to know things like item weight, value of order, and they'll need to send back to you confirmation that these items have been picked, packed, and shipped. So Stitch Labs and Sin7 both have EDI and API integrations with third-party logistics companies. So without getting into the technicalities of it too much, by offering both EDI and API, it means that they're able to include more third-party logistics companies than any other apps. So this means you're able to see exactly what stage your order's at within the third-party logistics company's system. So it gives you a direct integration between their hub and yours. So it really helps you get a real good grasp on order processes and also stock control. The EDI integrations as well don't just stop at the fulfillment, and that actually goes all the way through to anyone that is selling to retail stores and large supermarkets and the like. They will request that they can send their orders to you via EDI. And Sin7 certainly works with that very well, so you can receive all of your orders through EDI, which is a really nice system, and a lot of supermarkets and retailers actually offer you better rates if you do allow them to order through EDI. Next is that through the apps we looked at previously, ShipTheory and ShipStation, we're able to integrate with different shipping providers. So this will do things like obviously raise the label for the package that needs to be shipped, but it will also, in the case of Sin7 and ShipTheory, pull through and update the fees for that, so you get a much better idea of what your actual costs to deliver are. And they both cover complex products. So this doesn't just mean bill of materials, but it also means things like batch numbers, serial, and expiry. It is also worth noting that DIA does also cover complex products. So you do have bill of materials, you can have expiry dates, wastage, but it just doesn't link into the Amazon side. So that's why I've not brought it up for this webinar. And just like DIA, again, they have really flexible reports. So most of them work on like a pivot table style logic. So if there is a field within the system, you can pull it into your report and move it around and display it as you want. And then you can pull out those reports into spreadsheets or PDFs. So what are some of the disadvantages of these systems? Essentially, it comes down to cost. You know, they are more expensive due to the increased amount of features that you receive. So the monthly cost can be double that of something like DIA, but of course that's entirely dependent on which license they need, how many users, so it's really hard to say, but they often are more expensive. Due to them being more complex, they definitely take a lot more time and expertise to implement. So something like A2X can probably be turned around within a few hours, days, you know, a week at most. Most of our projects where we're using something like Sin7, Stitch Labs, or even DIA is taking anywhere from 1 to 4 months to get that implemented. So these aren't quick solutions that someone's going to just set up of an evening. Many people try, but you do get a lot of errors when you do that, which can be quite detrimental. And yeah, just adding to that, the complexity of the system also then relates not just to setting it up, but to the staff members of the business actually using the system. So that's something to be considered. You really have to think about training people on these apps. So now we're going to try something out. We're going to head back over to our poll. I can see there's a lot of chat going on and a lot of questions. I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to get to all of them as we're running through this, but shortly we will be coming to a specific question time, and I'll happily answer all of your questions there. So if you do have any, if you could type them into the questions window rather than the chat, it'll just be a bit easier for me to get to. But okay, so we're going to run a poll now and find out what solutions you guys would now recommend based on what we know about the different types of sellers, the different types of solutions, and the ones we'd recommend given certain scenarios. So we're going to launch another poll now and see what we get. So in our first scenario, we have in the top here, all of our fulfillment is with FBA, and we are selling only on Amazon. So let's run a poll and see which solution you guys would pick. Okay. Perfect, guys. So we're at 70% of the votes at the moment, so just wait a few more seconds just for that to come in. Perfect. So, correctly so, A2X was the big winner there. I'll share that poll with you. So we can see that 76% of you correctly picked A to X. So the 15% that did pick deer, it's not that you're necessarily wrong to use deer. My thoughts are that it may just be slightly overkill, because the user is going to have to log into deer and manage that, whereas A2X is a bit more of a set it and forget it solution. So it's going to be likely more cost effective and a lot less time to manage. So that's why we would go with A2X there. And following this slide, we will look at how you can set up to be a partner of A2X. So next, we've got that most of our fulfillment is with FBA, and we're going to say that there are multiple sales channels, but they're mainly focused on Amazon. So let's see where we go with this. Let's launch. Great, guys. That's fantastic. So I just need to close this poll so I can share my screen, because apparently you can just see my big head. So fantastic. So yeah, 79% of you correctly picked deer. For those 9% that did pick A2X, here's going to be the issue. If they are selling on other sales channels, you're going to have to enter all that data manually. So while A2X may work if, say, someone's got 100% of their fulfillment done by FBA and, you know, a majority of their orders are coming from Amazon, then maybe you could get away with A2X. But just so we can start to include the other sales channels, that's why we would go for deer. Some of you did pick as well Sin7 and Stitch Labs, and that is not incorrect, but what I would say is they don't necessarily have integrations with FBA. So while that won't cause much of an issue, again, it's just a matter of it being slightly overkill for what the client would need. And then finally, I think it'll be pretty obvious where we're going with this. We've got internal fulfillment, or they're using third-party logistics company and they have multiple sales channels. So let's just run the poll for good measure. And let's see if we have anyone that just wants to stand out and be different. I knew we'd find one or two of you. Fantastic, but we can close and share this one early because it's pretty evident, right? We're going to be going with Sin7 or Stitch Labs with one of the shipping tools. So you would never need a shipping tool if they outsource all of their fulfillment to third-party logistics companies. And for anyone that is working with e-commerce businesses or wholesale businesses, you'll know that this is a real growing trend where more and more businesses aren't putting the capital down on getting their own warehouse and warehouse staff. Instead, they're just outsourcing it for a slightly higher cost, but less of a pain in the backside to third-party logistics companies. And for those, they'd never need ShipTheory or ShipStation. ShipTheory and ShipStation come in for those that are managing their own fulfillment and warehouses and need to integrate with the actual shipping providers directly. So that's great. I mean, that's really good to see that you guys are all understanding that and keeping on top. So I'm hoping then that kind of answers our initial question of whether Xero is suitable. It clearly is, because Xero is heavily reliant on this ecosystem of apps. So alongside these apps, Xero is a very, very suitable solution. And one of the reasons why I prefer Xero over even QuickBooks Online for Amazon sellers is what you will find as a general stereotype is if people are selling on Amazon, they tend to be relatively into tech. Obviously, they're selling on one of the most leading marketplaces when it comes to adapting how we buy things. So they're really open to using new tools and new tech. So something like Xero, where they can have their reports show up on their smartwatch, is really going to be of interest to these people. So it tends to be a really easy sell. So anyone that's had to try and sell Xero to some more traditional manufacturers and you're having to convince them over the safety of cloud, that tends to be a discussion that you don't have to have with Amazon sellers, because they're obviously very comfortable by using Amazon. So that's why I believe that Xero is not just suitable, but a really good solution. So what's next? And we'll get to the questions after this slide. So please start typing them into the questions box. So if you have clients that are already selling on Amazon, the first thing that I recommend you go and do is to group your clients into those different types or different categorizations. Obviously, they are not definitive, right? They're just guidelines. We're just trying to get a clear understanding and a common dialogue on how we can group the different types of clients. So take a look at the Amazon clients you do have and give them one of those tags. And if you're not sure which tag to give them, run through those core questions and then reassess. So in scenario 1, so these are our Amazon only, FBA only, I recommend that you partner with A2X. So I'm just going to take you now over to their website and show you how you can do that. And just to be completely clear, we are not in cahoots with A2X. I'm not getting paid to recommend their solution. It purely is just the best solution out there for a direct integration with Xero. So if you head over to a2xaccounting.com, you scroll down to the bottom there, and you will see a little area there that's A2X for accountants and accounting firms. Head over there and just inquire about becoming a partner. For these types of clients, there's no need to introduce someone like BlueHub, a third-party consultant, because they're just going to be too small to justify our fees, and really they just need your advice on how they should be mapping to the chart of accounts, and then the use of A2X to pull that in. So you're not going to need to get any third parties other than A2X involved. So heading back to the slides. For scenario 2 and 3, however, you will want some kind of expertise. And for that, obviously, I'm going to recommend that you come to BlueHub, not just because it's a company that I work for, but we are one of the leaders, if not the leader, in inventory apps in the UK for Xero. It's where we spend all of our time focusing. So we're much more easily able to help clients understand which solution is going to work best for them, and then give them a gauge on what it would cost to self-implement or implement through someone like ourselves. And the way that we do that with everyone, not just people that are coming from this webinar, is we offer a free consultation. So that would be a call with me or one of my colleagues where we determine what their requirements are, which type of seller they are, and then recommend the solution. So to do that, you just simply head over to our website, and you will see on the home screen that you're able to schedule a call. I was trying to show you that, but it didn't quite pop up. So as soon as you go to bluehub.co.uk, the first thing you'll see there is book a call, arrange a time with the client, and select a call, and then you can speak with one of us, and we'll happily recommend for absolutely free whether it's an A2X, a DEAR, or one of the other solutions. So what about if you don't have clients on Amazon? For those of you that don't, and you're simply looking to learn more, I'm going to release an article on LinkedIn next week that's going to dive into this topic in much more detail. So again, if people are asking for slides, all the information that we've seen here today, plus much more is going to be in that article. And there's also going to be a version that's released in Xero magazine in December. So if you're still keen on learning a bit more about this and diving in, that's where I recommend that you head to next week. And for those of you that just want to come along again, learn a bit more about this, listen to my voice drone on for 30-40 minutes, then we will be running this again on the 12th of December. So even if you just want to recommend it to a colleague, that's how they can do it, and we will release this video in the new year. So here's a few questions. Let's head over to the question box and see what we have here. So if anyone does have any questions, feel free to type them into the question box. Wow, okay. So we've got quite a few coming in, so I will just get to the ones where I can. Okay. So this is a great question. So someone just asked me, can you run A2X and DEAR? That's from Amy Watson. Yes, you can. Why you do that, I'm not entirely sure. Okay, so of course you could, but really they're going to be serving a bit of a dual purpose. What I would say is, in that scenario, are you doing that because the client has other sales channels that you're trying to accommodate? If so, then I would just recommend that you go with DEAR. If they're already using DEAR and you're thinking, well, how can I get the information better into Xero? I'd just have a look that they've set up DEAR correctly. Another great question. So does A2X work on both vendor and seller central? That comes from Chloe Waite. So actually, I can't say with certainty whether A2X does work with Vendor Central. So what I will say is that Vendor Central actually works via EDI, so similarly to supermarkets or retailers. So in general, I've seen that most of the integration solutions don't actually cover it because they're purely working on an API basis. But something like Sin7 does actually have an integration with Vendor Central. Someone's asked my opinion on TradeGecko. TradeGecko is a fine system. It's just not one that I've used heavily personally. And when we have used it, I found it less suitable to complex products. So I would kind of put it more in the sphere of Sin7 and Stitch Labs. And due to the lack of EDI and complex products, that's why I kind of down rank it slightly underneath those. So another great question, what systems are most clients moving from? So actually a lot of the clients that we work with, so these larger e-commerce businesses, they tend to be anywhere in the 1 million to 15 million turnover range, and a lot of them are using Sage products, the ones that are based in the UK, so Sage 50, Sage 200. And what we've seen a huge trend of at the moment from Sage is that they're actually trying to move people that are on outdated Sage 50 systems into Sage 200, which is a very expensive procedure. The lowest you'll pay is around £15,000, so that would more than cover the costs of something like Sin7 and Xero, and give them, frankly, a much better system that's going to be a lot more integrated. So we have actually avoided people moving to Sage 200 and SAP and NetSuite by using tools like Xero, Sin7, and Stitch Labs. There's quite a few questions, guys, so I will sit and go through these for a little bit. You're more than welcome to leave or stay. Would Unleashed work instead of DEAR or Sin7? So my understanding actually is at the moment that DEAR doesn't have, Unleashed, sorry, doesn't have an integration with Amazon. And the reason why I didn't include it as well for the e-commerce businesses is, while it does have links with Magento and Shopify, it doesn't have links with things like WooCommerce and BigCommerce. So that's kind of why I've removed it and stuck with Sin7 and Stitch Labs, and again for that EDI reason is pretty key. Okay, I'll just do 2 more questions and then we will leave for the day. So Chris Brown, who's actually left, asked a pretty good question about how do you go through setting up A2X. The the way you do that is the initial screen, you'll set which of the fees, sales, reimbursements you want to track to a specific tax code and also chart of accounts. So it's all done within the initial setup. And my understanding is there are help guides, and A2X will actually guide you through that as a partner on how to set it up so that you have an understanding. Okay, final question. Let's try and find a good one. Yes, so this is from Kat Fogarty. Do you recommend that we sync Deer or Stitch Labs to Xero? You mentioned a transaction limit in Xero, and in my experience, Deer syncs a lot of transactions. So yes, I would integrate them. And within Deer, how it relates to Amazon, it actually only pulls over a summary statement, so it'll send over a summary statement into Xero. So you're not going to have to worry about those high transaction volumes. And actually, that can be true from the other e-commerce channels that Deer links with. You can ask it to batch as it comes into Deer, but you do, of course, have to then grab all the individual order numbers from the e-commerce platform, but then that would be received by Xero as a single invoice. And then Sin7, for example, that can actually do batching of invoices prior to sending them into Xero. So at the end of the day, you can group by payment type, for instance, so that you can then reconcile it more easily against the dump of money into the bank. Great. So there are a few more questions, and some of you I'll actually follow up personally afterwards just to answer your questions. So again, if anyone does have any more questions, or you'd simply like to discuss this with me a little bit more, it's exactly the same process as if you want to introduce one of your clients. Head over to bluehub.co.uk. The first thing you'll see there is a big orange button that says book a call, and for the next few weeks that'll actually be directly with my availability, and just simply say what it is you want to discuss, whether it's you just want to talk about this a bit more, you want to introduce a client, and then I'll send you over call details and look forward to speaking to you there. So thank you all for your time. I can see we've had a great amount of people stay around till the very end, so I can see you're all keen to learn. If you do want to learn more about not just Amazon, but Xero and the ecosystem as a whole, and cloud accounting and how to push that in your firm, we are constantly running free webinars like this. So again, if you head over to our website, you can find all the information and register for free. Thank you all very much for attending, and I look forward to speaking to you all individually soon. Take care.